this about? What?
That's okay though. For being so young, you're very, very smart. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So keep up the good work, man, and stay flat, okay?
Okay, I'm a flat earther. She couldn't do it. I'm a flat earther. I'm a flat earther. I'm a flat earther. I'm a flat because it doesn't curve, the water always finds its level.
What'd your teacher do?
She just didn't talk to me anymore. All she did was walk away. And I was like, what is this about? What?
That's okay though. For being so young, you're very, very smart. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So keep up the good work, man, and stay flat, okay?
Okay, I'm a flat earther. She couldn't do it.
Up for sound bites. This is awesome.
Welcome back once again to Anti-Religious Scripture Study with Karen B. and Just Jack Flat Earth. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Earth is still flat. And this is episode 33. Episode 33. Welcome.
In the third month of the 22nd year.
There you go.
322. Yeah, actually it's the second day of the 13th month, so not even the third month.
Second day of the 13th month.
Yep. So we got another month for the new year, and then a couple weeks to Pesach, otherwise known as Passover, and Matzot, otherwise known as unleavened bread. So big stuff coming.
What do you mean big stuff coming? Just big days, appointed
times? The Moedim,
times?
yeah, appointed times. Yep. yeah, I'm taking take a week off of work and pay attention to nothing but hanging out with the family, partying, and the creator. That's it.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah, good stuff. Especially with like, the employment that I've had lately. I'm constantly going. I work in the morning, I work in the evening. So yeah, it'll be good to have a week to just completely not have to worry about work. Be good. So, um, no, I have no way to lead into the, disclaimer.
Okay, that's fine.
I,
Just go
I
for
guess
it.
I'll just read it. All right, just Jack's disclaimer. To the religious, if you believe it's wrong to study scripture outside of your religion or denomination, if you believe your religious leaders or church fathers are incapable of having inherited anti-scriptural traditions of men, if you've already made up your mind about scripture, including the scriptures should not be studied at all, then this stream is not for you. To others, if you are open-minded to others' opinions, if you haven't made up your mind about scripture, if you've been turned off to religion but believe there's truth in scripture that may have been changed or hidden by religion, if you live according to scripture and like to dig in and discover more, then this stream is for you. We are looking at scripture in the original language using concordances or dictionaries for root words, as well as context from a non religion perspective. We will be, as well, having life experience discussion. We are not here to argue with others about theology or doctrine by the traditions of men, including Catholicism, Christianity, or Judaism. We will be discussing the importance of origins and show how religions contradict the scriptures. Actually, I can segue out of this into this chapter because there's a religious belief and even a scholastic belief that we're going to reveal is not it's not proper understanding of scripture. That's going to come up this week. So yeah, I guess we can go backwards with the disclaimer. Get ready, folks. Get ready.
All right.
And this is also an advertisement for that movie again. So we'll talk about that later. The
Uh,
must-see movie that goes along with these final chapters of
oh,
Genesis.
okay. Right, right, right,
Yeah.
right. Got it. Okay, so quick review of what happened um the last couple of chapters because we did 45 and a partial of 46 because 46 had a lot of genealogy and like
Correct.
bloodline stuff in it.
Yep.
So basically, what happens is Yosef reveals himself to his brothers and like has a like an anxiety attack or some sort of like panic
At the
attack or
end.
breakdown at
Yeah.
the end. Um,
Yeah, he's like he sends his brothers back with a bunch of supplies,
mhm,
lots and lots of stuff. And the brothers run up ahead and they tell the father, "Hey, Joseph's alive," and like it's basically like his heart ceased. But you know, I think Karen's explanation's pretty plausible. Like he was having a panic attack, like he thought he was dying. And then when he saw all the resources coming in, he was revived. It says there. So that's not a horrible translation, but yeah, it's it was a major shock to his system to hear that his son was alive. I mean, he's already dealt with it. He had a hard time with it. He had the possibility of losing his second son, so he was worried about that and
mhm,
thought, I'm gonna die if I lose yet another son because I can't, my mind and body can't handle it anymore. Somebody asked me in an email this week about the heart as far as what heart means, and I have it on previous translations where it's the word lev, which is a lot having to do with the intent that can be specific to like your mind and the choices that you make and stuff like that. For lev, as in um, the heart matter of a your intent basically.
mhm.
So it's not necessarily, the muscle pumping blood type of deal, right? It would be more of a intent scenario for that type of heart. All right, so we can go and recap 46. Geez, 46. Yeah, because even if you look at the, go to verse 26 of 45. Sorry, and then you look at my translation there. It says heart or intent of him.
Right.
So it's a little of both, but yeah, it's typically about intent, which today we would say mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people still use the heart, poetically, like my heart's breaking and I feel with all my heart and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right, next one, 46. All right, so it says Elohim spoke to Yisrael. That's Yaakov's real name.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that Yaakov, and he says, "Here I am." So that "here I am" shows up many times in the scriptures. It's very important. It's like you're presenting yourself like, okay, do what you will with me type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Don't be afraid to go down to Mitzrayim." Well, why does he have to tell him not to be afraid of don't go down to Mitzrayim? Because he's been told for 3 generations never to go down to Mitzrayim. So here he's saying, yeah, you should definitely go down there, and there I'm going to make you a great nation. You're going to grow, and I'm going to go with you. And then, so this is where they get into the genealogies. This one begot this one, begot that one, begot that one. And you should definitely look into that. The names have meanings. It's very interesting stuff. And then I think we start back on 26 again, where the story continues. Yep, all the beings were 66 beings, and that has significance, but we're not going to look too much into that. I just ask people to look it up for themselves. Look up everywhere where 66 shows up in the Torah. And the sons who were born to him in Mitzrayim were 2 beings. So that's Joseph's sons. They're half Egyptian, if you will, right? They're not from Abraham's home family, as previous generations have been. This is actual half Mitzrayite children. And then he's telling them they're going to go to Goshen, because Goshen is like the prime real estate. And this is something that we've discussed in other chapters. Like, there'll be stuff that's told first and then explained later. So here he's already decided that they're going to Goshen, but in the next chapter, Pharaoh's going to tell them to go there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get more information about how the Goshen was decided and about the whole livestock thing, which is the last verse of this chapter. The last couple verses here, it says, when Pharaoh calls you and says, what's your occupation, that you shall say, your servants have been men of livestock from your youth, even till now, both we and our fathers, so that you dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to Mitzrites. And I did a little bit more research on that, and from what I can tell, the Mitzrites, the Mitzrayim, which is later called Egypt, was only a large city-state. It was not the entire land that we now call Egypt. It was just a large city-state on the water there. And the famine caused it to where the other landowners south of Pharaoh gave up their power because of the famine. And that they addressed this in that video, Patterns of Evidence, the Exodus, which everybody should check out. Especially now that we're reading this, it'll like impact you more. You'll see more of the detail. But they considered people who raise livestock to be of a lesser stature. Like less. They're not as important as us Mitzrayim. So they did own livestock as far as like horses and cattle, but they didn't raise them in the land of Mitzrayim. And then later on, well, we're going to see, but here in the last couple verses, well, why would Pharaoh even ask them? Why would they be in Goshen? And why would they be livestock raisers? That's going to all be very clear in the next chapter. So that's what the Torah does sometimes. Like sometimes it just gives you an overarching sentence or couple seconds sentence, and then in the next couple chapters it goes into more detail about that thing.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
All right.
All right.
Alrighty. Chapter 47. Then Joseph went and spoke to Pharaoh and said, "My father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds, and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan, and see, they are in the land of Goshen."
I'll pause for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Just a reminder to everybody. There was no such thing as chapters and verses when the Torah was written. There was no numbers on them. There was no breaking up of the stories. I just had to put that out there.
And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" And they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers." And they said to Pharaoh, "We have come to dwell in the land because there is no pasture for your servants' flocks, for the scarcity of food is severe in the land of Canaan. And now, please, let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen." And Pharaoh spoke to Yosef, saying, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Mitzrayim is before you. Settle your father and brothers in the best of the land, let them dwell in the land of Goshen, and if you know of capable men among them, then make them chief herdsmen over my livestock."
Over whose livestock?
He said, "Over my livestock."
Yeah, so Pharaoh's like, all right, cool, they can live there and they'll be in charge of all my livestock.
Right.
So they're like, this is it's an honor, right?
Uh-huh.
Before it's just like, yeah, you're the lowly, Canaanites or whatever. But now you have stature. You're the official livestock caretakers of the great Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
His thoughts, not mine.
Right,
He's
right,
just
right.
a dude as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And Joseph brought in his father Yaakov and set him before Pharaoh, and Yaakov blessed Pharaoh.
Because Yah came with Yaakov. So
Right.
he had the ability to bless Pharaoh.
And Pharaoh said to Yaakov, "How old are you?" And Yaakov said to Pharaoh, "The days of the years of my sojournings are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not reached the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their sojournings."
Okay, so what he's saying here is, yeah, I'm 130 years young.
Yeah.
And he's also saying that, my life's been tough. He says 130 years of my sojournings, that's being a stranger in the land,
Right.
not a dweller. So he, constantly moving around trying to find a spot. And his life's been hard because, the love of his life died. The son whom he loved died until he found out that he wasn't dead.
Mm-hmm.
The famine's happening. Like, all this stuff is happening in the last parts of his years. So, yeah, he's kind of whining a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And Yaakov blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Mitzrayim, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramesses, as
Yep.
Pharaoh had commanded.
Okay, here's the
Ramesses?
yeah,
weird.
Ramesses. But here's the thing, is that this is the verse where people get so confused because they think that the Israelites were in the land under Pharaoh Ramesses. But that's not the case. The case is that when this copy of the Torah, probably in the time of, what's his name? Nehemiah and Micah. So when they came out of Babylon and they made the copy of the Torah, he's like, that land that we call Ramesses, that's where they lived.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't called Ramesses at the time, it was called Goshen, right?
Right.
So this is just a disclaimer, like, that place we call Ramesses now, that's where it used to be, Goshen. Okay?
Okay.
So what historians have done is they said, okay, it's the prophet Ramses, da 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 da. But if you read further beyond the Torah, where it's talking about the history of Israel, of the kings and all this other stuff, if you do the timeline, Ramesses doesn't work at all. So they were pre-Ramesses. This is before Ramesses even. And you find this out later. And again, everybody should watch Patterns of Evidence, the Exodus. They do a really good breaking down of how the history's been changed. And all you have to do is realize that there's these gaps in Egyptian timeline. And if you take out the gaps, the timelines all work out.
Mm-hmm.
And it we see that in our own modern history. We see that with the whole Dark Ages thing, where they put in these gaps to like make up their own prophecies and fulfill them. In reality, we're gaining time with these gaps of nothingness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you lose these fairy tale gaps, everything starts lining up. And it also says that they have a possession in the land. Nobody's supposed to own land in Mitzrayim except for Mitzrayim, right? You're supposed to be of the Commonwealth or the birthright of Mitzrayim. But here, these foreigners are coming in and they're owning land. That's a huge, huge deal. And this is evident, in the recent archaeological dig of that area. Like, it looks like these slaves were treated as like, as Commonwealth. And then all of a sudden, they look like they're not treated as Commonwealth. They look like they're treated as slaves. And it just, everything is played out. But the architects are like, you can see that it's like the story of the Israelites, but it couldn't be because it's the wrong time. So obviously it's not the Israelites, even though everything lines up to it being the Israelites, except for the timeline. All right, so here they got possession in the land. Like, they're living like, nobles, if you will.
Uh-huh. Okay. And Yosef provided his father and his brothers and all his father's household with bread for the mouth of the little ones.
The skippers.
The skippers.
Yay. We're skipping. We're children.
All right. Now there was no bread in all the land, because the scarcity of food was very severe, and the land of Mitzrayim and all the land of Canaan had become exhausted from the scarcity of food.
Which we knew about, so like we know that it's going into 7 years.
Right.
And when the second time when they sent the brothers back, it was in the second year. So it's getting more and more severe. The longer it goes on, the worse it gets, because the scarcity of food, you're running out of the storehouses, you're running out of trading with the other nations and so on.
Yeah. All right. And Yosef gathered up all the silver that was found in the land of Mitzrayim and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought. And Yosef brought the silver into Pharaoh's house.
So other nations are buying grain from Pharaoh because Yosef was the interpreter of the dream that they'd have 7 years of great plenty, which he stored up, and then he was portioning it out for silver. And they've ran out of bread, or they've ran out of grain so much that now they're running out of silver. Like, he's banking, like he's taking all the silver from the surrounding lands.
Wow.
And again, it says it all that's found in the land of Mitzrayim, but at the time, it wasn't even called the land of Mitzrayim, because there was multiple city-states south of Mitzrayim.
Okay. And when the silver was all spent in the land of Mitzrayim and in the land of Canaan, all the Mitzrites came to Yosef and said, "Give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For the silver is gone." And Yosef said, "Give your livestock, and I give you bread for your livestock, if the silver is gone."
All right, so we'll take your other resource.
Right?
Forget this money stuff. You got livestock. That's even more valuable because it's replenishing, right?
Right. And so they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses, and for the flocks they owned, and for the herds they owned, and for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year.
So in a year's time, he acquired all the livestock of the land. So he's got all the silver. Now he has all the livestock.
And when that year had ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, We do not hide from my master that our silver is all spent, and my master also has the livestock we owned. There has not been left any before my master but our bodies and our lands.
Okay, pause for a second. This word bodies is the same word that's used as nations that the Jews have now made a cuss word, which is goyim.
Really?
Yes. So the body is, a group of things is a body, right? And it's also considered the core or the backbone of the body, right? So it's the central part of the group. All right?
Yeah.
Goyim is not anything bad. That says goy right there. So it's about the people.
Right.
All right?
Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and let us and our land be servants of Pharaoh, and give us seed, and let us live and not die, and let the land not lie waste.
So they're like, okay, we have no money left. We have no livestock left. We have some land. We'll give you that, and then we'll give you ourselves, right? Because we're going to die if we don't get some grain. So we'll become your servants or taskmasters of the land, right? So this is where Pharaoh gains all the power. This is where Mitzrayim gets expanded into the mighty nation or the large area that it encompasses, of the near modern age. So this is, I thought when I heard about Pharaoh back in the day that the pharaohs were always treated as god kings and that they had control over the whole land and everybody worshiped him.
The other end.
Why does he move people into cities? Control.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Right.
That is not the way of Yah. In fact, it has the undertones of darkness, right?
Right. Right.
So,
because the word for city is like dark and city.
Ear and air of the city and darkness. Yeah, it's one and the same. And so Pharaoh's gaining control. So how does he control the people? Well, he puts them into cities. Now, he still has all their land and he has their livestock and he has them work the land and the livestock for him, but they don't get to live there. They have to go out to the land and then go back to the cities where he can control them.
Wow.
And now we're going to get into something else that we have to deal with today, which is taxes. But continue.
Only the ground of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had from what Pharaoh gave them by law, and they ate that which Pharaoh gave them by law. Therefore they did not sell their ground.
Right. And so the priests don't have ownership, but they have responsibility. So they get to dwell on a specific piece of land for a specific amount of food, but that's it. That's all they have. That's their entire way of life because they can't work the ground. They can't work the animals. They're just doing their priest stuff.
Okay. And Joseph said to the people, Look, I have bought you and your land today for Pharaoh. Look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall be that in the harvest you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh, and 4/5 is your own, as seed for the field and for your food, for those of your households, and as food for your little ones.
All right, so now they said, we're going to be slaves, right? Now, did he put them in shackles and keep them in dungeons and only let them out to work? No.
No.
They are slaves by continuing to provide taxes.
Right.
And live in his cities.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So you're to keep 1/5 of it, but guess what? A portion of that 1/5 you're giving up to live in the city. Right? You're paying rents. So it's more than 4/5. More than 1/5 that goes to Pharaoh because part of the 4/5, that's what I meant. Sorry, I got it backwards.
Okay.
But part of the 4/5 you're using for rent and for food purchases and stuff like that while you're in the city.
Right.
That's more control. You know,
Yeah.
this whole monetary system of trading within the cities, you know,
Yeah.
it's like
Now you're working for them instead of working for yourself.
exactly. And so here it's showing you that this is slavery. They say we give ourselves up as servants. Well, that means servitude, that means taxation, that means you live where we tell you to live, you do what we tell you is work, you know.
Yeah.
That's an interesting form of slavery that is presented here.
Wow. Yeah. And they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the eyes of my master, and we shall become Pharaoh's servants."
Oh, please, Daddy Government, please save us.
Yeah, you saved us. Oh, wow, this is amazing. This chapter's tripping me out.
I'm telling you, dude, like I told you, there's a lot to this chapter. Like I got goosebumps because of the revelations that's like just popping off the pages here, man.
Yeah, crazy. Totally. Everybody giving up their freedom for slavery.
Yep. But that's because they're saving our life, obviously.
Yeah.
They can't acknowledge that it was Yah all along.
Right.
It has to be the man that's in control of what Yah provided, right?
Right, exactly. That's so funny. And Israel dwelt in the land of Mitzrayim, in the land of Goshen, and they
wait. You missed verse 26.
Did I?
Yep.
Oh, and Joseph made it a law over the land of Mitzrayim to this day that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the ground of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. And you know what? This is funny because that's how it is now. Churches don't get taxed.
That's correct. And hold on one second. Yeah, why? Because then it keeps the people in more control. Anyway, if you look at the word for law, this is not law as in Torah, as in the instruction, like this is the way you should live. Mm-hmm. This is a inscription. This is a decree. Okay, this is like the difference between a law and a statute. Yeah, right. It's only a law if you consider it a law.
Right.
Right. It's only if you conform. Yeah. Right. If you conform by living in the city and paying the taxes, this law pertains to you.
Right.
Okay.
And Israel dwelt in the land of Mitzrayim, in the land of Goshen, and they had possessions there, and were fruitful and increased exceedingly.
Okay, pause for a second. So this is not a land that's being taxed. Goshen's not being taxed. Because they didn't have to sell any land. They didn't have to give up anything. They were already prosperous.
Right.
They're living in the prosperous land.
Mm-hmm.
And then the control of the Pharaoh, they're treated as Pharaoh's friends, let's say. Like, you know, not technically, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they're not being come down on at all. They're living very nice, these the Israelites, you know.
Right. And Yaakov lived in the land of Mitzrayim 17 years. So the length of Yaakov's life was 147 years.
No big deal. That's a bit more than 120, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm just saying.
And the time for Israel to die drew near, and he called his son Joseph and said to him, "Now if I have found favor in your eyes, please put your hand under my thigh and show loving commitment and truth to me. Please do not bury me in Mitzrayim."
Okay, so this is another testimony.
Right.
Last will and put your hand under my thigh and put
swear
your hand on my testimonies.
Balls.
Yeah, swear by my testimonies. Don't bury me here.
Right.
Don't leave my body in this ground.
But I shall lie with my fathers, and you shall take me up out of Mitzrayim and bury me in their burial place. And he said, "I do as you have said." And he said, "Swear to me." And he swore to him, and Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed.
Yep, that's it.
So that's it. So his father's dying wish is that he doesn't get buried in Mitzrayim.
Yeah, I don't belong here.
Right.
Is basically what he's saying. And then you won't find out until Exodus that his wishes actually fall through. So yeah, it's yeah, this chapter for me is very interesting. It's how power changes hands and how people are willing to give up their freedoms for the sake of, you take care of us type of scenario.
Right.
And their slavery is by taking a portion of their income, and by income I don't just mean money, because the silver was all gone. The income is the harvest,
Right.
right? In our case, they just control the harvest with the money. So, it's very interesting. And
It is.
that's how Pharaoh became God King, and he would express his God kingliness with the priests, right? And I know of plenty of religious circles that say we need to support our government leaders, we need to pray for our government leaders, you need to vote for government leaders.
Right.
They say that right in the church, and it's like, this is familiar, so yeah, I find it very interesting.
It is interesting.
And this is precursor to the great pharaohs. When you watch that video, Patterns of Evidence, the Exodus, when you
Mm-hmm.
watch it, you're going to see how after this is, this is when the great pharaohs came on the scene.
So this is when Egypt has its big
Growth.
reign, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is when Egypt becomes a mighty, mighty, mighty nation. But then they start, embellishing, like, oh, we killed all the other nations except they're still there. But they're saying, like, we've conquered them so much that we're in control of them, is basically what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
They would use embellishments by saying that they wiped them out, but in reality, they're just saying, yeah, we control what happens over there, hundreds of miles away that you'll never see. So yeah, it's yeah, quite interesting. This is where Israel is living there, and they're in charge of all the livestock. Again, this is going to be important later when you watch this video and when you see Exodus.
Mm-hmm.
And it also shows the power, the far-reaching hand of Pharaoh by the time that they leave. In the beginning, Pharaoh's just a dude in charge of a city-state, and he becomes in charge of a mighty nation, and then his descendants are born with a big head. And that's what we're going to see happens here in the next few chapters. So, yeah, this is where pharaohs start getting the ideology that, I am the master of all,
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, it's interesting history there.
It is interesting. And it also kind of lends to the whole thing about how the timeline is been totally skewed, and they've added lots of time, because we're told that, like, Egypt, like the height of ancient Egypt was what, like 5,000-10,000 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, not necessarily so, yeah. Because,
So,
I mean, even if you look in Egyptology yourself, like, ignore the scriptures for a moment,
uh-huh.
and you look at the Egyptian timeline, which is told by one dude, by the way, that we got all ancient history of the gods becoming kings and, all this other stuff. There's huge gaps. We're talking, like, sometimes a millennia gap,
Mm-hmm.
like there's problems there where you have to really consider the source of the information and how they're still trying to build the details into the history. So,
Right.
yeah, it's very interesting when you look at Egyptology, where they say the entirety of Egyptology is built on scraps of rags and tatters. So, totally.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. All right. Very
All right,
cool.
Shabbat Shalom, y'all. And yeah,
Shabbat
he
shalom.
said 501c3. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the ticket.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing. You don't even have to be 501c3 to be tax-free church. You can do
Yeah,
it without being 501c3.
yeah, 501c3. You're a little bit more controlled though.
Yeah,
So
50 if you do it under a 501c3, you are controlled. If you don't do it, then you're not, but it's most people don't even realize that you don't
yeah,
need to be a 501c3, because everybody's been programmed to think that taxes are you're required, but
right.
the taxes is actually a voluntary system. There's no
Right.
law that says you have to pay taxes.
Yeah, and the 501c3 is just so, like, let's say you donate to the church. When you file your taxes, you can
Yeah,
say, I've donated so much to this church, and then it becomes a tax credit. So
right,
that's why.
exactly. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. All right. Anyway, thank you once again for joining us for
Hello.
Anti-Religious Scriptures Study, episode 33. Shabbat Shalom.
And shalom, Frank Logic and Zulu one. Shabbat shalom. Stay flat. It's still flat.
Yes, and have a restful day.
Yes, please.